Uh, they're just sincere Christians, and they like I said, they make a joyful noise. And if you're sitting in the right seat, you might be in front of one of our sisters there named Melissa, and she really belts it out. She can just sing to the top of her lungs, praising her God, and it's just beautiful. It's precious to see and to hear them as they worship God, and to be able to enjoy it and be a part of it. Also, it builds us up, and so. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to go and to serve over there and to enjoy all the things that we got to enjoy, being around those people and enjoying their worship, enjoying their talents, and taking all of those things in. We're going to look at several pictures, and I'll tell you a little bit, and then some of the other guys are going to come up and tell you a little bit about their experience also. This, of course, is our team, and Zab is right there in the middle being held by all of us. That's, of course, Nigel and Jasmine's son, and this is in their home, close to the end of the trip. This is, of course, Nigel and Jasmine and Zab, and I know that many of you probably know them a lot better than I do. I got to know them better, of course, on the trip, but just a wonderful family, a family that is serving God in a place that it's not always super easy to serve God, and yet they're doing a wonderful job there serving. This is a picture where you can see the smaller white building with they look kind of yellow, the windows on it. That's the building where they have been worshiping, and the regular church building. The building that you see behind it, the two-story cinder block building, that is the new church building that's going up, that is not completed yet, but that's where we did all of our classes, most of our classes for Vacation Bible School. That was the window into mine and Jared's classroom with the teenagers, and so on down, all the different classes that were in there. But it's going to be a great facility, and one that will probably be filled up very, very quickly as that church is growing. It's growing fast, and as the gospel spreads, as more understand the simple gospel that we read in the Bible, more are going to obey it and come to the faith. And so it's a wonderful thing to see the church growing. I wanted also to include just a few pictures so you could kind of see the children. These children were so precious, and one of the biggest things that really jumped out to me was the fact that these children were walking, some of them over an hour, just to be at Vacation Bible School with us, just to enjoy that time of studying the Bible and learning songs about Jesus and getting closer to other Christians. And I took a few pictures and tried to get it, but I never could get really one that would be clear when you put it up on the screen like this, of children just walking for so far. You could see a hill in the distance as you look down one of the roads that was in front of Nigel's house, and you could just see forever down that road. And in the hill, we finally drove up there, and when you get to the hill, it just keeps on going even further. It's just just so long, and you can see children walking the whole thing, coming to Vacation Bible School to enjoy their time together. I don't know if you can see, but Ray Linda is right there in the middle of that little crowd, teaching and talking with those little kids and telling them things. This is a crowd in the courtyard while we were doing one of the skits out there of the children out there and some of the little girls who were at Vacation Bible School with us. Every day we did a skit, and the kids really enjoyed the skit as much as could hear it. The ones who were up front were really into it, and kind of the further back you got, the harder it was to hear, but they really enjoyed it, and we had a good time doing it for them. The kids always would find my mustache, because I would wear a pretend mustache, and they'd always find it, and so you'd see some little kid running around with a mustache the rest of Vacation Bible School that day. And but anyway, we had a great time doing the skits, trying to teach these Bible lessons, and then of course the classes would reinforce some of the things that we were teaching in the skits. The 2-year-olds class, this was actually very early on in the week, and as the numbers grew, the classes, of course, got much larger. But as we went through the week, on Monday, our total number was 360. Tuesday, there was 436 who were there. On Wednesday, it grew to 466. On Thursday, it was 481, and we finished on Friday with an attendance of 542. And so, as you can imagine, this is getting bigger and bigger, and more children, and the more that came, the more wanted to hang on each one of us. And they just come and grab you and just love on you, and just wanted you to be completely, looking at them and talking to them. They wanted your attention, each one of them. And so so it was fun. It was hard to give everybody the attention that they wanted, but I think that between the 9 of us, we did the best we could and made them all feel like they were the only kid there. We tried at least to encourage them and to love them in that way. Here's the 2-year-olds class. The next group, 3-year-olds and up, had a great class, and they actually got to use the regular space where the auditorium is right now, where we had our worship service on Sunday. And so they were in that room, and of course they had a blanket down and had to continue to add and move kind of around the room to make room for all the kids that they had as the week went on. Then you get to the 6 or 8-year-olds, and this is probably on Thursday, either Thursday or Friday. Their class grew and grew. At first, they were just back there in that corner. And of course, this is inside the new building. You can kind of see downstairs and in the front corner of the building. And then you would go upstairs, and at the very end of the hall, the little bit older kids, and I only got a couple of pictures of this classroom because I was on the other end, and but you can see there's just as many kids going that way as there are going this way, and so lots of little ones there. The 11 through 12-year-olds class was packed. I think that was the biggest class every single day. And on Friday, they had 140 kids in that class. That's Tim's class. And so he had a good group. I don't know if you can see him up here, but he's having a good time teaching them. And they really love being in that class and learning from their teachers in there. But they did a great job. And then our class and the teenagers, I think we ended with 90, right at 90 in our class on Friday, but we grew each day also and just really had a great class. We did a questions and answers time on Friday in my class that was just really enlightening. We sent the iPad around because I couldn't really understand because of the dialect. They speak English, but they speak a different kind of English than we speak. Is that the right way to say it? And so their dialect is so thick, I couldn't hardly understand, but they could all understand me, which is weird. I did talk a lot slower than I talk here, though, I think. Sorry. Yeah. And so I tried. I almost did the Dalton talk, the way I speak to Dalton, and trying to bring him along slowly. That's the way I talk to all of them, and so that kind of helped them understand what I was saying. But I got them to type it into the iPad, and they would type in their questions, and finally the iPad got back to the front as I answered some questions that were written down. But their questions were so sincere. And as I told you last week, we had some in our class and who were attending Vacation Bible School who were Muslim or who considered themselves atheists, some who considered themselves Christians and different flavors of Christendom and different ideas that they had brought to the table. And so we had just all kinds of questions. That last day, I actually started our class, and we usually had an activity and a craft that we would break up and do and then go back to doing a little bit of a study at the end. But that day, because they kept sending questions up, we actually went for an hour and 45 minutes solid of just answering Bible questions. And it was the young people asking them. Now, about an hour and a half into it, I said, "Is everybody still with me? Y'all want me to keep answering these questions?" And there was one little girl in the back who was totally honest. She said, but so many others were, yeah, and one of them said, "You haven't answered mine yet." And so they were anticipating, wanting to know what the Bible said and where to find it, because of course we took Bibles for them all, and so they were looking them up and they were circling what we were talking about and finding the answers that God gave to the questions that they had. And it was just honest, and it was just pure, and it was beautiful to see these young people seeking what was true. And in my class, we had everyone from 13 all the way up to 19. We had several young mothers in our class who were there studying, and sometimes they'd bring their babies in there, and it was just beautiful to see them really wanting to know more about what God expects from them and what they should be doing about their faith. So it was just a wonderful time. Nick Aspey is going to come up and talk about some of the pictures. These guys picked out specific pictures, and so that's the ones that they're going to talk about, and I'll turn it over to Nick, and I'll come back after John's finished.
Just to reiterate what Trey said, thank you so much for all of your support and your prayers going through this. We prepared for this for months, and it kind of, the thing that didn't quite sink in for me in the pre-work and getting all the travel plans ready was hundreds of kids were going to come to this VBS. It's one thing to think about and put that number down on paper, but when we got down there, it still quite wasn't real. And we got prepared, and Nigel had told us that we were going to be using the new building and preparing it. So we pulled the pews out after Sunday's worship, and we start packing them into the classrooms, and we see them all spread out there. And it's still not sinking in how many kids. I mean, we're counting out, okay, this pew will hold a dozen, and we've got a few of these in the classroom, so that's about 40, 50. And Tim's telling us that's not going to be enough. Later, when we're preparing crafts, and we're preparing stacks and stacks of cutouts, it's still not quite sinking in that there's hundreds of kids coming to this. And just again, thank you for everyone who helped with the pre-work on this stuff. If we had had to do everything from scratch, we would have looked like this all week. When the benches or the pews start getting full and we start pulling all of the benches from the children's classes, and we've pulled every seat that they have pre-made in the old church building, and we start using cinder blocks and wooden planks from the construction, covering the planks with construction paper so the kids don't get all dirty from the concrete dust. It's starting to sink in that there's hundreds of these kids coming. And it was a fantastic thing to just hear the chatter, and it was impossible to get that auditorium quiet. There was just no way. Like Trey said, there's skit in the front. Of course, the kids loved it, but as you got further and further back, that's me in the very back there, you can't hear a thing. There's just so much and so many of them, and they're just so excited to be there. And thank goodness that we had these ladies here helping us, because there would have been no way that we could have done what we did there without all the local support for this VBS. We weren't just going down there to run a VBS. We were there to help them. This was definitely their event, and they took ownership of it, and it was just great to work with them because there was the sincerity there. There was that enthusiasm, both from the kids and from the teachers. If you haven't met Nigel, and I meant to put a picture, if you haven't met Nigel and if you haven't talked to him, there's just a fire there. And it's so incredible to have been a part of this and to just feel that energy, feel that excitement for learning God's Word. And if you have the opportunity to go, because there is nothing like it. And that's all I really have to say. Thank you again.
Good evening. I just want to start off by saying the same thing that Trey said and what Nick said as well. Thank you so much for your support. I know several of you helped out myself and Whitney as well, and it just wouldn't have been possible without you, so we greatly appreciate it, and it is truly just a life-changing experience, and I hope and pray that each one of you will be able to go one day. We're obviously doing the hippo song here in this picture, and Whitney made the comment. She said, I've never seen you like this. I've never seen you get in front of people and sing and dance like that. And it's so awesome to see these kids come from miles away, so many of them, and here they're singing. You can't help but get fired up. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing feeling. And I just wanted, this is a picture when we went down to Dora, is a church in the jungle. And I mean, it's out there, it's a few miles into the jungle, and what impressed me the most was people came from miles, and the women there, they dressed in their best dresses, their makeup, their hair was done, the guys dressed up, had their shirts tucked in. I mean, they came in their best appearances through the jungle, walked I don't know how many miles or how many hours just to worship God, and it was just an awesome feeling. But the people there, they were so generous. I talked to the preacher there, Brother Terry, for several minutes, and the next thing I know, we're talking about coconuts for some reason. I don't know why. But then we're headed down, and Tim's up in a coconut tree cutting down coconuts. I mean, they just want you to have anything, and they'll do anything for you, and it's just amazing. But I wanted to say a few words about Trey. We heard some of his best lessons down there in Guyana, and he is an amazing preacher, an amazing Christian, and we're so fortunate to have him. And Tim, I hope and pray everyone gets to go on this trip one day, because Tim does a wonderful job of putting it together, of getting everything coordinated. He makes sure that everything's taken care of, that we're safe, and everything goes smoothly, and he does a wonderful job with that as well. And this is actually a picture of that church in Dora, and it's a building with 4 walls, no electricity, nothing, and it sits on the river there, and it's just a wonderful view. But this right here, this picture kind of sums up my perspective on Guyana. Every night we sat there at dinner and we gave a devotion. And I talked about this picture because this is a huge sand mountain. I mean, it's really big, and we climbed to the top of it. And about halfway up, I'm thinking, whose idea was this? It was awful. But the verse that came to mind was in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. It says, "I fought the good fight, I finished the race, and I have kept the faith." And that's what I was thinking the whole time going up this mountain. But this is Zab and Nigel, and after we got done, we've already been up to the mountain. We come back down, and then Zab takes off up the mountain, and there goes Nigel again for round 2. But Nigel starts going up the mountain, and he grabs Zab on the way, and then he just carries him all the way up. And I was thinking, that's just a perfect picture of what our Christian walk with God should be. We can't take anything with us out of this world. We can't take anything. But the one thing that we can take is other souls. So I just wanted to leave that picture with you. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a wonderful time, and it would not have been possible without you. And it was truly, truly just a life-changing experience. Is that it? Oh, there's more. This right here actually is Sunday night at Amelia's Ward Church of Christ. I was privileged enough to give the lesson there, and before I went on this trip, I was preparing for a lesson to give there, and I could not figure out what to talk about in Guyana. I was thinking, what kind of problems do they have there? What could I talk about that would touch their hearts? But I learned from preparing this lesson and getting up there and speaking that it doesn't matter. That God is the same here as he is in Guyana. The Bible is the same here as it is in Guyana. They struggle with the same sins that we struggle with, so that was truly, truly a humbling experience. And I'll leave it with Trey now.
That picture's from when we got our first American food on our way back. We were in Chili's, and I was really happy. I was really happy in that picture. But we were actually, we had this grand plan that we were going to try to get on an earlier flight to get back faster, and it was crushed by the folks at the Delta counter when they said no, it was full. They were nice about it, but there was no room on the flight. And so we thought, well, plan B, let's go into Miami, and we're going to eat some real key lime pie. Actually, that was my goal. Everyone else was kind of just whatever, just anything. And anyway, we ended up staying in the airport, and we found a Chili's, and that's where we ate, and it was really, really good to get to enjoy that time together. But I think we were there for 5 hours, 6 hours in a layover until we finally got on an airplane to come home. And when we did, I was in between Tim and a really, really big guy from Nigeria. And he was scared to death to be on an airplane. And so it wasn't a whole lot of fun because he kind of took up 2 seats. And so I'm in the seat with Tim. And we got to be really, really good buddies while we were on that trip. But we had a good time. These are actually my 2 favorite, the 2 pictures that I guess illustrate my 2 favorite things while we were there. One of the things was in the teen class. This is a young man who considers himself a Muslim, and he asked several really good questions in the class, and we discussed those with the others. And then after the class, I had gone out with some of the other students, and Jared stayed back with him. And this is what was going on. He started asking Jared some questions, and so Jared, of course, opened up his Bible and started having a Bible study with this young man. This young man looked up to Jared. All of the young people there, they would look up to any of our young people because of the way that they view us as people who come from an extremely blessed country and recognize that our lives have been blessed by God. And they think of us as people who strive above anything else to do God's will. It's humbling to realize how little they have, and yet they look at us and think that we have so much because of some kind of righteousness that we have, maybe more than others. And we know the truth, though. We don't. We're no more righteous than filthy rags, like Isaiah says in chapter 62. He tells, our righteousness is like filthy rags. And yet these people, they have this respect for us. And Jared was able to sit down and answer some questions and go through some scriptures with this young man. And it really builds up my faith in our people, in our young people, and in the abilities that each one of us really have if we are put on the spot. If someone would ask and say, hey, will you answer this Bible question for me? We don't necessarily know how much we know until we have to use it, and I really appreciated Jared for a lot of reasons, mostly because of his muscles while we were on this trip, putting those pews up and down that balcony, but for many other reasons. But this really just made my whole trip, to see him studying the Bible with a young man and teaching him the way of God more accurately. It was a beautiful thing to see him expressing his faith in this way. I know I'm embarrassing you. He's looking straight down. He didn't want to even look up. But I'm really proud of Jared, and I think that it's representative of all of our young people. If they are given the opportunity to serve, I know that they will, because they are looking up to all of you. And you've set an example for them so that they would then know what they should do and how they should do it. And so it's just a huge encouragement, I think, for our whole church family to know that we've got great young people who are not just making a difference here in the school and in their lives, but all the way down in Guyana or anywhere else where they might go. Who knows what God can do with you guys and how much you can accomplish through your knowledge of the Word. My other favorite thing was something that the other guys brought up about eating dinner together. We ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner together every day, gathered around this table up in Nigel's house. And as John was saying, we had a devotional every night. And we went around the table and we talked about our best moment of the day. And each person shared something about that day and how it had impacted them and how it had really helped them in their faith or helped them as they grew closer to God or closer to one another. And it was just an inspiring time to sit around that table. It was a goofy time sometimes too. We had a lot of fun, but it was just wonderful to hear the thoughts that each person had and the accomplishments that were made in the lives of people who we didn't know until we'd gotten there and possibly will never see again on this side of heaven. That's a possibility. And yet the great impact that these people had on us. We went there to share and to help them, and yet we ended up being the ones who were shared with. We ended up being the ones who were given so much. They fed us so well while we were there. I thought, I'll lose a little bit of weight, which I need to do. I gained weight while I was over there because they gave us the best that they had. They fed us well. They looked after every need that we had. Like I was saying, I always kind of gave Tim a look about just about everything, and he'd say yes or no. And then I'd know what was safe and all. But it was just wonderful to rely on each other and to have each other for an extended period of time and to live like the church family that we know God expects us to be. It was beautiful to be around each other, not only because of having each other, but especially the impact that we were watching each other have with these children in influencing their lives and directing their lives towards God and helping them striving for them to see Jesus somehow in our lives that we know don't always add up to what it should be. One of my other favorite times was preaching in Dora. It was a beautiful paradise. You can kind of see the rivers back there behind us, and it flows like that. It's the Demerara River. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, there's piranhas in that river, which spiked Dalton's interest. That's all that he really talked about was he wanted me to bring him back a piranha, and thankfully Beverly found him one, so we got to bring one back for him. But it was dead. It wasn't a live one. And we got to take a picture up there. Everybody didn't get to go to Dora, but we had a wonderful time there, and it was really probably the most beautiful place that I've ever had the opportunity and the honor to get to share the gospel while we were there. What they had told me was preach until the wild parrots fly over, and that's what these are. These are the parrots as they were coming, and this was my view from where I was looking out, and I saw the parrots coming, and you can hear them coming too because they start making their noises as they're coming across the river. They feed on one side of the river and they roost on this side of the river, and so I tried to get a few pictures and capture them as they were coming over the church building as we were worshiping, and they were joining in with us as we were singing praises to God, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing to be a part of. Our girls who were on the trip, our ladies who were there with us, they just did so much. They're so creative, and I know that Lisa had done so much before we got there and had prepared so much, and then the other ladies just really took it and ran with it while we were there, making sure that we had the crafts that we needed for each class, and making sure they would remind me because I was kind of not as into doing the crafts as much as trying to learn how to play cricket and some of the other sports that the kids played, but they just really kept us on track and reminded us over and over again that these things meant a lot to those kids. And it's amazing how much it really did mean to the little kids and especially even to the teenagers, some of the things that we were able to do for them. Of course, I can't say enough about Tim and Nigel. The relationship that they have is inspiring and encouraging to see two men of God working together and making a huge difference. If it hadn't been for Tim, we would have been really lost because we'd get off at these airports and he'd know exactly where to go and what water to drink and what water not to drink and what fruit to eat and what fruit not to eat and all these kind of things. And so it was just, it was wonderful to be there. But to have, even more than those things, to have his spiritual guidance, to be able to go to him with some of the questions that we were facing and some of the ideas that we were teaching about and helping with the young people, he was so valuable to us in that way, and just the same, Nigel also, being able to guide us and help us to understand the culture and understand where these young people were coming from and some of the struggles that they faced. And as they were saying, it's the same things that we face. It's the same struggles. It's just a little bit different setting, and that's really all the difference was. Same kinds of people, just struggling with the same kinds of things, striving to get closer to God in heaven. I wanted to point out, if this is a map of Guyana. Right here is Linden, if you can see that, and that is where we were in Linden. This is Georgetown. This is where the airport was, and in between somewhere, see all these lines in the little grass thing? This is jungle, swampland, and that's where Dora is, somewhere in between there. And so we were really in the middle of nowhere. It was about an hour away from where we were. And being out in that jungle, like I said, it's probably the most wild place that I've ever been. It was encouraging, though, also, as we talked about seeing the children come from miles and hours away, walking to Vacation Bible School. The church at Dora, you could stand there on the bank and see the boat coming from way down the river. And you'd see him as he went up to the bank. And you really couldn't see because the trees reached out over, and then he'd come back out and he'd have a few more people on the boat. Of course, that's the boat that I think the church here helped to finance, and it's called and named in honor of Trip Martin. And as the boat would go in each time, it would come out with more people. And finally, they'd made it all the way down the bank to the bank close to the church where they got out and came up and worshiped with us. Something that the guy who was driving the boat said that he mentioned that he had seen 2 panthers in the last few nights. And so when they're getting in and out of the boat and coming to worship, it's not like what we do. Basically the only fear that we might have in coming to church is being late or the possibility of some accident that we really don't necessarily think about. But they actually have to brave a lot of things. There's piranhas in that water, okay? They don't stick their hand down, and play with the water while they're driving through it in the boat. It's dangerous. When they get to the shore, when they get to where they could walk up to the houses or the shacks that they live in, they have to watch out for wild animals. They don't know, and they have to be careful for those things. And they still come. They still come. And after worship, they stood around and talked with us for over an hour. We were, learning from them, going and getting coconuts, watching Tim climb. I had that picture, but it was really blurry. But he climbed way up in a tree and got coconuts down for us, and we stayed there for over an hour. And those people had to go home in the dark. And we knew this, and we were trying to leave so that they wouldn't have to go down that river in the dark, knowing that they were going to have to go to their homes in the dark and not knowing exactly how far they would have to walk once they got to the riverbank off the boat. I don't know how far they had to go. But I know that they didn't mind staying with us, that they wanted to talk to us and to enjoy our company and to enjoy that fellowship, even though they were going to face those dangers, going through that swamp, going back home. And so just a beautiful people, a beautiful group of Christians who desired to serve God. This is us there at Chili's at the end of our trip, all freshened up and happy to be on American soil and happy to have made it through customs with the things that we had. That's a picture of us before we left. And this is the youth group representation over here, and then this is the adult group over here. And so, I don't know, maybe we were already stinky, and so Jared decided to stay a little bit. I guess it was John. John was probably stinky, so. But we just had a wonderful time. And as we've said, thank you so much for standing with us and standing behind us and making it possible that we should go and that we would be able to go. I want to encourage you. Over in Romans chapter 10, starting in verse 14, it says there, "How shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things." He tells us here, we need to go. I mean, don't forget, as we were talking about a little bit this morning in Mark 16:15, he tells us, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Go. I want to encourage you. You don't have to go to Guyana to preach the gospel. You can go right across the street. You can just stay in your home, many of us, and talk to those who we love right there and make sure that they understand that God loves them and God wants the best for them. And he gives us a plan through the scriptures that if we would bring our lives closer to him, he will be with us and he will heal those issues that we have and he will overcome the struggles that we face. But we've got to put our faith in him. We've got to put our trust in him. And by putting our trust in him, it should compel us then to tell someone else, to go and preach, to go and teach and tell others about the great blessings that we feel, that we have, and that we are able to experience because of the faith we have in Jesus Christ. I want to encourage you to have beautiful feet. To have beautiful feet because you're ready to go and tell others, whether it be across the ocean, down in Guyana, or if it be right here in Russellville, Alabama. People need the gospel. Everyone needs the gospel. They need to hear about the wonderful things that God has in store for them. And so let's make sure we go and tell them. Let's make sure that we do everything we can in our power to let them know that we care about them, that we love them, but that more than that, God cares about them and God loves them. I want to tell you, if you're here tonight and you're not a Christian, we want to encourage you to become one. To put yourself fully into the hands of God, who loves you, who created you, and who will see you through all of this life and into the next. If you haven't put your faith in him, please do that. Please obey his gospel, that his blood might wash your sins away and make you pure and holy before him. And if you have done those things, you have given your life to Christ, I want to encourage you to make sure that you continue to preach the word. Continue to tell others. It's not just up to those who choose to be preachers to tell others about Jesus. It's up to all of us. He tells Christians to go, not just ministers, but all Christians. Go and teach and baptize and teach some more. And so I want to encourage you, keep doing that and keep lifting up our young people as they are not only the future of the church, they are the church. And they're making great differences right now. So Christians, let's make sure we continue to set an example up before them that they can follow and that they can be strengthened in because of our faith. If you have any needs tonight, won't you come while we stand and we sing this song?
Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone can change the leper's spots and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin, crimson stain, he washed it white as snow, and when before the throne